I can block out adware, right? So all my home devices connect to this DNS before they touch the internet. And this is running off 5 volts, right? On a Raspberry Pi Zero, this is called a Wi-Fi module which connects to my router, right? And this is running non-stop for the last almost 1.5 to 2 years, right? No, just this one naked board, right? This also puts out a tweet every 4 hours, putting out its status on my Twitter handle, right? So that I don't have to go to this device. I just have to go to my Twitter handle and an update will be there, right? So the kind of things that we can do with a board like this, the possibilities are endless and limitless, right? So let me share my screen and we'll take it from there. You can stop me at any time if you have any questions. I'm not a person who will wait till the end to seek out questions and answer them. So
Sure, sir. We will allow the participants to type in their questions on the chat window. If there are any, I will help you reading it for you.
thank you, sir. Okay, so a quick roundup of what is the difference between a microprocessor and a microcontroller, right? I work with. I mean, I'm not a professional in this field, but as a hobby and even having fun time with my kids, right? My elder son did this. It's a remote control car. He did it with a Node MCU, right? This is a microcontroller, whereas the Raspberry Pi that I showed you is a microprocessor, right? So this is a complete uh, PC which can run a Linux or a Windows 10. We look at what all operating systems we can run out of this, but this is just a microcontroller. You can see that here, or let me show you. I have another one. So we can see this. This is just a microcontroller with a USB port on this side and a Wi-Fi. It can host a Wi-Fi website through which you can control this. I believe this also has Bluetooth, or I'm confusing that with, I think it is a Raspberry Pi Zero. This does not have Bluetooth, but this has only the Wi-Fi module built in. It's based on the ESP266 chipset, whereas the Raspberry Pis are based on Broadcom chipsets, right? So, I mean, you know how much this cost? You can do home automation very easily with this, especially with a Wi-Fi chipset. I had a problem recently when before all this Corona thing, right? Um, one of the Amazon delivery guys, I was in office and he called me over the phone, said there is a package for delivery. So I said there is nobody at home, and we have a outside the house we have a cupboard where we keep the UPS and the battery. So I said open it, keep the package there, close the door, and you go. He said, yeah, I've done that, and he went. When I came home that day, uh, the package wasn't there. So I'm not sure if he did really keep it. I mean, it was not a big deal, about 200, 300 rupees worth of package. So what I decided to do was put a electronic lock there. How do I do that? You get this solenoid locks which applied power, it'll open up. Otherwise, without power, it'll stay shut. So I fixed that to the door, connected the relay to a Node MCU, and this has a Wi-Fi. You know, this has a Wi-Fi node AP. It can serve as an access point or as a receiving point, like just a normal device. So connect this to an MQTT server on the cloud, and all you need to do is send a message to the cloud MQTT server, message queuing server, and this Wi-Fi node will keep on polling that as a subscriber, not as a publisher, We'll keep on polling that, and moment it gets a message saying open the door, it'll unlock the door. So I can lock and unlock now from anywhere in the world. No, simple things like that, right? We need to the only innovation we can do the kind of innovations is we should not live with a problem. We should try to solve it, right? Only I'm seeing that especially during Corona time now, the kind of innovativeness that the people are bringing out in the field is just fantastic. Whether it is making an you know uh, ventilators, whether it is coming out with health kits, the kind of innovations people are bringing out is fantastic. So with that said, quick look at microprocessor versus microcontroller. Most of you will be aware of this, right? So where do you want to use what, right? In a very general purpose, let me just go over here and kind of show you what kind of things that you can do with what. So I'm taking as Asus Tinkerboard and Raspberry Pi as just examples. There are many like Omega Pi boards and all, and much more powerful boards, right? So what is the price range you are looking at when you are looking at Raspberry Pi or Asus Tinkerboard? Right. So we are looking at around Raspberry Pi 4 with a 4 GB RAM is now going for around 5K, but a 2 GB is sufficient for most of the systems. So that is around 4K, right? Tinkerboard might be a little hard to get, but even if you get it, it will be around 4.5K. So that is the kind of investment you are looking at for the board itself. I mean, beyond the board, you don't need much except for additional peripherals like motors, servo motors or stepper motors and stuff like that want to you build, right? But most of the times Raspberry Pis or Tinkerboards, you use it as a PC rather than more to do with hardware programming, right? If you look at Arduino or Node MCU, whether I have those Arduino here, which is Arduino Nano, I think. Yeah, Nano. It's not. I've not even opened it. It just came recently. So this cost about $300 now on Amazon, which is a microprocessor. But this does not have any Wi-Fi or anything built in. It just with the ports that you can solder on. You can see that I still have to solder the ports so that they fit into the breadboard if I want it. Otherwise, I'll just load the code and get the job done with it, right? But this Node MCU that I showed you earlier, this will cost about 350, $400. So that is the price range here. Sorry.
No, there was no question, sir. You can proceed.
Yeah. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I can adjust the modulation.
No, I think the pace is fine.
Okay. Thank you. So what can we do with Raspberry Pis, right? So many of the commercially sold 3D printers now, they don't have any separate systems except for the hardware of the 3D printers. Everything is controlled by a Raspberry Pi. You'll get a Raspberry Pi like this. This is a Raspberry Pi 3B, which comes with a built-in Wi-Fi module. Whereas I have here, this is a Raspberry Pi 2. One of the first ones I bought. This does not have a Wi-Fi built-in, so you have a network port here, right? With 4 USBs and a network port here. This is one of the first Raspberry Pi 2, I think. I did not buy the version 1. I usually don't buy version 1 of anything because it usually will have so many teething problems. Just you might want to wait a little bit and buy the version 2. So this is version 2 with no onboard Wi-Fi. This is version 3 with an onboard Wi-Fi, right? Of course, the Nano Zero I showed, it also comes with a onboard Wi-Fi. This I paid about 1,300, I think. Nano, fantastic piece, 512 MB RAM, onboard Wi-Fi. If you don't want Wi-Fi, this retails for about 900 rupees, right? If you want to do some hardware programming, you know? So, I mean, for the kind of cost and the kind of expansion they gave to your solutions, I mean, there is really no value, the cost versus the value they provide is excellent, value for money is what I say. So 3D printers, media centers. With media centers, you can set up Kodi Media Center. I'd even set up one on, where is that? This one, right? I'd set up a media center with this. So if you can see, I've added a fan. This is a temperature controlled fan, so that when the temperature goes beyond 70 degrees Celsius, the fan will automatically turn on. The fan, I've added a fan to an NPN transistor, using it as a switch to control the high from an pin. And when the that's a Python script running, checking the temperature. When the temperature goes beyond a certain point, it will switch on the transistor, which in turn will switch on the fan that is running. So this is a media center that I see. I mean, 20 years or even 10 years back, if you say a media center, I can hold it in my hand. It'll be, people never used to trust you, thinking you're crazy. But this is the truth today. This is just a Raspberry Pi running in as a media center, right? Kodi, OSMC, Kodi, that media center, you can run Amazon Prime, Netflix, YouTube, everything on one Raspberry Pi. Yes, there are some challenges. I believe those challenges have been addressed in Raspberry Pi 4, especially if by the 4 GB or the 2 GB version. I think this is just 1 GB. So there were some challenges for which I had to make optimization, but yeah, 4 GB Raspberry Pi Media Center, fantastic. It works just fine. Hack boxes, Kali or Parrot OSS, especially if you are into wireless hacking and ethical hacking. Load up Kali in one of the micro SD cards, and you can take it anywhere, do any kind of hacking sitting in a coffee shop, right? If you want to control drones, right? There is a lot of intelligence required to control a drone, which might not be possible for a Arduino Nano or a Node MCU. You need to control the GPS, the altimeters, the 4 motors, so and the wireless inputs and the outputs that are coming in. Retro gaming, industrial grade robots, wireless security systems. So there is an entire project dedicated to Raspberry Pi based wireless cameras. You can host up to 8 cameras, I believe. What they do is they take a Raspberry Pi 3 as the main device, and then for each camera, they have a Raspberry Pi 0 attached to it to monitor the cameras. Portable radio stations, I have a QRP set, amateur. I'm into amateur radio, so I have a 10 watts multiband radio, which uses a Arduino Nano for VFO, voice variable frequency oscillator, and it will also drive an LED, touchscreen LED, to control the radio, right? You can do that. Just a Arduino Nano, right? Astrophotography. So one of my projects, I haven't still got time to come to that, is a camera or a sky tracker, right? You can easily control a stepper motor, so the control the camera for about 10 minutes, so that you can take the photo of the sky without any star trails, right? Of course, these can work also as a desktop PC, and getting into next is cluster computing. There are so many universities that have built cluster computers out of Raspberry Pis. I think Oracle has built one with 900 Raspberry Pis. I mean, it's like I said, the possibilities are endless, right? So what can we do with Arduino or Node MCU, right? Independent home automation, smart devices, lights, plugs. So if you have a smart light bulb in your home, that probably has one of these devices built into them, right? Smart locks, especially smart lights. I got one smart light out of Amazon just to open it up, see what makes it work. Then I put up a HTTP debugger on how it works. Figured out that it is using a message queuing system to a server somewhere in China when it integrates with Alexa, right? So it can integrate with Alexa, and when I say Alexa, switch on the light, Alexa actually sends the data to the registered MQTT server, message server, and the bulb acts as a subscriber to that server which accesses publisher. So if you know the publisher subscriber model, this will be very, very easy for you to understand. Then of course, remote control toys. So my daughter was saying I need a remote control car. So got this and asked my son to build one. Very, very easy. Two motors connected to a Node MCU and a Node MCU code written in C, which acts as a web server connected. Your joystick is your mobile phone. With a black thing is the power bank. So this is a 10,000 mAh power bank, and this car runs for days on one single charge, right? No more paying, expensive rechargeable batteries or even Duracells. I hate that, right? Of course, smoke alarms, gas alarms, you get all kind of sensors. That is one thing I've missed out, thought about it late, the kind of sensors that you get for all those devices. You get humidity sensors, weather vanes, temperature sensors, gas sensors, any kind of sensors you can think of. For drones, you'll need, 3D sensors which can track X, Y, and Z coordinates and stuff like that, right? We talked about ham VFO controllers as well. So moving ahead, some of the variants that Raspberry Pis, I've already shown you a couple of them, but the key one here is the Compute Module 3, which they came in, I think at 2018, I think it's about 2 years old. You can line up this the same as a Raspberry Pi 3, or the Raspberry Pi 0. No, I think it is a Raspberry Pi 3 model. But you can plug it into a DIMM socket on a PC. You get a separate board for this as well. You can plug thousands of these and build a supercomputer instead of spending a lot of time on powering up a full-fledged Raspberry Pi, right? So compute module. This OS is different and stuff like that. What are the OSs available for a Raspberry Pi? Okay, let me take a step back and stop here to take any questions if you have. Then I'll continue with the setting up of a Raspberry Pi.
Yes, sir. So I think it is a apt time that you gave a pause for questions. So before we proceed ahead, some of the questions are Windows OS is supported by Raspberry Pi as by default it is Linux only. So there's a question on OS support.
So Raspberry Pi supports Windows OS, but it's a headless Windows OS. You don't get a UI. You can build services and run on that.
Thank you, sir. Also,
So
there's
what
a
is the
question
meaning
on
of
the
headless thing? Sorry to interrupt, sir. What is the meaning of that headless thing?
So headless is, for example, if I have to set up this Raspberry Pi, right? Usually, how do you set up? You connect a keyboard, a mouse, and a monitor to this to set up the Linux, server on this or the Windows server on this. But what if you don't have, or if you are setting up images for multiple, boards like this? So I'll show you how to set up and configure a Linux installation, a working Linux installation on a board like this, actually on this. I'll show you how to do it on this, right? Without a computer, a monitor, or a keyboard. You just need a laptop, a SD card, micro SD card, and a SD card reader. That's all, right? Right now, like I said, I set up a headless on this and it's running like this. I can SSH into this. I can, configure this, do everything from my laptop itself or a remote connection. I don't need a monitor or a keyboard for this, right? Even for this, I don't need a monitor or a keyboard. I can just run it like this.
So the next question is on the programming language. Which programming language would you suggest to automate stuffs using Pi module?
Yeah, very interesting question. My preferred choices are Python and C. But of course, there are other languages available. Even Mono is available, so you can code in .NET as well. In Windows, I stick to Python and .NET or C Sharp. In Linux, it is for me it is shell scripts, C, especially when you have Node MCU, right? This is predominantly C. I don't work with any other language on this except C, because other languages setting up the libraries, configuring the libraries, it's not a cakewalk. Unnecessary, you're wasting time. So this is supported by the Arduino IDE. So I just go with that. It works, right? Programming in C has always been a fun since the last. I think I started programming in C in 92, I think. So it's always been a fun, and it's a language that I will not let go easily. So it's my preference.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, sir. So the next question would be on does Raspberry Pi have a Bluetooth module? And I suppose it should be
Yes.
supporting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Raspberry Pi, both this, I'm not sure whether the Nano Raspberry Pi Zero has a Bluetooth. It's only Wi-Fi, but the Raspberry Pi 3 Plus has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in.
Um, the next question would be like, what is the effectiveness of RPi with speed, and does it support both analog and digital signal processing?
Yes. The 40 pin that you see here has got both. You see this 40 pin, maybe I'll see the 40 pins. Oh, I forgot the pin layout, but if you search for pinlayout.xyz is the website. If you go there, you will get pin layouts for almost all the boards on this earth. That's a fantastic website. Yes, it supports both PWM analog and digital IO pins. So you can just get it like, in fact, if you, this I showed you, right? There is this wire that is coming out of this one. You know what I'm using this for? I was testing my radio. This is an antenna wire, right? There is a RPITX. It's a library written in Python. You use that library to generate frequencies from anywhere from 30 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. No, point, right? And it uses a simple wire as an antenna to begin with, but you can expand it as much as you go. I was using this because I did not have a RF signal generator to test my radio at one time. I used this as a signal generator and it worked perfect. So this uses a analog pin to generate the signal and send it out a piece of wire, right? So
Yeah, so before we move on to the next session, next section, so we have one last question. Can we measure power consumption used by Raspberry Pi?
yes, you can. I don't have the device here right now, but you get USB power measurement strips. Okay, you input your USB power into that, and that has a USB plug that you plug in your Raspberry Pi into, and it can measure how much power a Raspberry Pi is consuming, or any other USB for that matter.
Thank you, sir. So we can move to the next section.
Sure.
So like we will take the remaining questions once you give a pause.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the next one is OSS available for Pi. There are Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Core, Server. I work with Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Core and Server. I have not worked with because they require some, they are kind of pushing it towards the enterprise where you need a login, just like Windows 10, right? Where you need a login, where they'll give you a SSH key that you can log into. My own Raspberry Pi, to log into my own system, I need a SSH key for them. No, thank you. OSMC is the media center I was telling you about. These are some of the PyNet. This is for cluster computing. Mozilla Web Things I have not explored this. Not LibreElec is another media center thing. The weather station, Adafruit, which is the company which manufactures many peripherals for Raspberry Pi, has their weather station and uses this customized Raspbian for its operations. So Ichiga Jam is for kids, I think. I think this is from a Japanese source. RISC OS is we use ARM here, but RISC on ARM is a new. I have not find a suitable use case for me, but there could be other scenarios where you will want a RISC OS. So what do? So we start with downloading the Raspbian. We use Raspbian because it is meant for, it's got a good support for headless setup. But if you want to download, I've installed Ubuntu, like I told you, I've installed Kali Linux, I've installed Parrot. You need a lot of Linux hands-on and experience to get around some of the issues that you will deal with. You will deal with issues, right? It's not simple. The Raspbian, they have made it very simple for people to work with, right? So, sorry, somebody's saying something.
No, there's a bit of background noise. I'm trying to mute them. You can
Sure.
proceed.
Okay. So I've downloaded the Raspberry Pi, Raspbian image here. You can see we have the last one here, Raspbian buster.image, right? And these are some of the Kali Linux images that I use occasionally. I think I deleted all of them. I don't have a use for it now. So these are the hash text, right? So you download it from here, raspberrypi.org downloads. I'll forward this deck to Changapa sir and Raghavendra Prasad sir. They can share it with you guys, or I'll put it online somewhere if you are interested for the links and all. So headless setup, somebody asked me what is headless setup. So when you don't have access to a keyboard, mouse, monitor, or cable, multiple cards you want to build for cluster compute farm. So it's much easier to do a headless setup, get an image and then flash it across all for the similar things. Repeatable process with guaranteed outcomes, faster setup for do it yourself. I don't want to be sitting in front of it, configuring everything. This way it's much easier. So Raspbian also comes with different versions. This Raspbian Buster with desktop is what we are dealing with. It also comes with desktop and recommended software, which includes your Office software. I think LibreOffice it will come with. So the size also increases as it goes along. This just the minimal kernel Raspbian Buster Lite, which is only 434 MB, whereas the big one is 2.6 GB and the small one is 1.1 GB, right? So I've downloaded this. You can go download it from here. Download it using a torrent or a zip. I usually use a torrent because I have a server running on one of the Raspberry Pis. I just send it a torrent request. It will keep on downloading and put it on a central shared location that I can later access. So now the next thing is formatting of the SD card. Now, what kind of SD card do you want to use for your Raspberry Pi? Let me just shut down my Raspberry Pi that I have for now. Okay. So this is, you might have seen SD cards like this before, right? A micro SD. The kind of SD card that you want to see or use is a minimum class 10 SD card, right? Anything other than a class 10, your OS will be slow, right? And stick to known brands like Sony or Samsung or SanDisk, right? I've read and worked with people who had Raspberry Pi issues finally nailed it down to bad read and write speeds on the SD cards, and buy the SanDisk or micro SD cards from known vendors on Amazon or any other good places. Don't buy it from mobile phone shops because they usually sell unbranded or fake versions. I've seen many fake versions where they say it is 32 GB card, but any number of times you format, it doesn't go beyond 300 MB, right? So, so by a class 10, you need a minimum class 10 for optimal speed, because the advantage of Raspberry Pi or the disadvantage of Raspberry Pi is that it doesn't have any onboard storage. So this is the only storage it has. There is no, unlike a desktop ECU, there is no L1, L2 cache. There is no RAM built into that. There is a RAM, but it's usually it's a RAM. There is no ROM, right? So this is the only storage a Raspberry Pi gets. So make it fast. Buy a class 10, nothing less than that. Okay. So I have a SD card reader here. I'm putting in the micro SD card, right? And you need to format this, right? To format also, see already it is saying there is a, yeah, that is because there is a Linux partition and Windows things it's corrupted. That's fine. So formatting also, I use a special tool called SD card formatter, which is from the SD card association. Let me share it, show it to you. Formatter. This from the SD card association. They do the formats particularly as per the SD card standard, what the card is built for. You can do the formatting in OS, in Windows or Linux or whatever, but it is all OS specific formats. These guys, they design the standards, they know how the card should be formatted, and they've also given a tool called SD card formatter, which is free. So I just use that. I don't worry too much on that. So let us format those SD card formatter using the SD card formatter. So there you have it. This is the SD card formatter. It has selected, it selects only SD cards that are hosted on your laptop or system, right? It doesn't even by default select any hard disk or other USB peripherals that, USB hard disk or anything that you have selected here. So you even by mistake, you'll not format something else. So you can do a quick format or a overwrite format. Right? I don't usually do overwrite if it is I'm reusing it, but if I'm giving the SD card to somebody else, I'll do overwrite format for data security. Deleting the data or formatting using a quick format on a SD card, your data is still there. I can take it out, right? So always do a complete overwrite format if you are giving the card to somebody else, right? Because data can be retrieved using that. If you value privacy, you need to take that step. But if we are using the card within your house, that's fine. Quick format will do the formatting very, very quick. So I'm doing the format now. Okay, so format is done. So we'll move on to the next one, which is now write the Linux image, the Raspbian image onto the SD card that we just formatted, right? So this is a tool called, Win32 Disk Imager. This away again open source. You get this from SourceForge. Win32 Disk Imager, which can help you read and write Linux images. So this is a free tool. It works, right? There are other tools, fancy tools, paid tools as well. You don't need that. This will work. Okay. So let me start that Win32 disk imager. Go. Okay, where is that? There it is.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so I was talking about this read-only allocated partitions. You might have a 32 GB card, but you have used only 10 GB. If you don't click this, it will take an image of all the 32 GB, which is a waste of space. If you say read-only allocated partitions, it will create an image for 10 GB that you can write back up. So right now we are writing it to the device. Select the device correctly. It again selects only the SD card that you have put in place. So write. So this will take a minute or two just to write. In this time, if there are any questions, I can take that.
Sure, sir. So we have a few on the chat window. So let me, okay. So looks like already have someone using RPi. So the question is, sometimes my RPi turns off itself when I run the program. What's the reason for that?
Sorry, what?
Sometimes the Raspberry Pi turns off itself when I run the program. What's
Okay.
the reason for that?
Raspberry Pi, it's a full-fledged PC. Unless I know what the program is, what it is doing, it's very difficult to say. But it could be that if your power supply isn't sufficient, right? Yeah, a lot of people make a mistake of using a phone charger, right? Because it's a phone charger as a micro USB, it'll power Raspberry Pi. No, Raspberry Pi 3 and onwards need at least 3 amps of power supply. So it needs a dedicated power supply. It does not work with phone chargers. Okay, so it needs a dedicated minimum 2 amps power supply. So that could be the reason why it can turn itself off. Another reason is the CPU gets overheated. So as a safety precaution, it will turn itself off. But in most cases, in Raspberry Pi, if the CPU gets overheated, it will throttle down the CPU uh, frequencies and usage before it can shut itself down. If it goes beyond that, it will shut itself down. That's why for most of my Raspberry Pis, I put a heat sink on the CPU and the wireless units, right? So it's better to use a CPU, and this media center that I was showing you about, I had installed a, you can see here a fan because it's a media center and I've got a copper heat shield there on top of the CPU, right? So heat control is a primary concern always in a Raspberry Pi. So you need to keep it airy. So for this, I'm not using any, I'm just putting this in a plastic box, no separate box or anything, so that it always a little, it has got a lot of air floating around it. So to take the heat away.
Okay, they say that they are using a power bank for power supply.
No. Power bank, it's not an active power bank. Always use a proper USB power supply, not a power bank. Power bank will turn itself off based on the, see, power bank is designed to charge phones, not to run USB equipment. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So the next question would be, would there be anything discussed on the networking today?
Networking, what kind of networking are you looking at?
I'm not sure. It was a generic question which was posted.
Yeah, I'll show you how to SSH and remote desktop into your Raspberry Pi now.
Sure. I think like we have only those questions. And for the participants, I request all of you to restrict the questions for today's session. Yes, there has been a glitch in the issuing of the certificates for the previous seminars. So I request you to please restrict the questions for today's session so that we go with the flow. Thank you.
Okay, we are at 90%. Okay, once this is done, right? Next is we need to open up. You need to remove the SD card and put it back in the laptop so that it will recognize the boot partition. Will there be networking like static IPv6? It supports both. Depends on what you want to do with IPv6. Okay, so I'm taking out the SD card and putting it back. Let me open up the Explorer so that we can go there. As you can see, it's created a 200 MB boot, 250 MB boot partition, which has got these files, right? So a couple of things here, right? To enable networking, you need to add a WPA supplicant.conf file to the boot partition before you plug into the, see, all these things has to be done in the Raspberry Pi before you, Raspberry Pi SD card, what the SD card will go into your Raspberry Pi before you plug it into the Raspberry Pi. Okay, not after that. Because the files in this will be copied to the respective locations by the Raspberry Pi upon boot, first time boot. Okay, after that it won't do that. So if you don't do this but plug in the SD card back to the Raspberry Pi and then come back and try to do something, it won't work. It's then better to reflash the image onto the SD card and then do that. So let me open up a WPA supplicant file and show you what it contains. So I have this WPA supplicant supplicant.conf, right? This contains all the information about the wireless networks that you have in your house or you want your Raspberry Pi to connect to, right? I've given two networks here. This is my current network virus container, right? And this is my phone hotspot. So I've given two because I want my Raspberry Pi to connect. See, look at the priority, priority 1, priority 2, right? I want my Raspberry Pi to connect to any one of these network if the other is also not there. But the priority 1, it will always try to connect to this virus container or an Ice Cafe, which is my another hotspot. Okay, so it's in this format, WPA supplicant file. A lot of people make mistakes in this file and their networking doesn't work, right? In a headless setup or the Raspberry Pi to connect to a network is the key for you to get a successful headless setup because you don't have an access to a monitor, a keyboard or a mouse for you to look at the monitor and then enter the, select the SSID, enter the password and all. You don't have that. So this is the file which will help you do that. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll drop this file here onto the boot partition. I'll copy it here. Right. Just the boot partition doing nothing here. I'm just copying it here. Then the next thing is we need the Raspberry Pi once it boots, we need it to start the SSH daemon, okay, automatically, right? So this is one thing you need to know about. The starting of the SSH daemon automatically on a file indicator. Okay, I have a file here called SSH. Okay, I don't need a file. I can just create a new file here, new text document here, call it SSH, remove the, there should be no extension to that, just call it SSH, empty text document, it will be 0 KB, right? There will be nothing inside that file. It's an indicator to the Raspberry Pi boot process that especially Raspbian, okay, no other Linux. I'll come to other varieties. If there is a file like SSH empty file, it will start the SSH daemon so that you can connect via SSH to the Raspberry Pi. Okay, you might ask a question, if I'm using Ubuntu, if I'm using Kali Linux, if I'm using what? They won't start the SSHD process automatically because of security reasons. Okay. Then what you have to do is you have to have a Linux VM running on your laptop, connect the micro SD card, go into the Linux VM, mount the SD card, go to /etc/network, I think, and then configure the SSHD server to restart on. I think I have the installation here somewhere. This not here. So if you are on a Kali Linux or a Ubuntu, you need to shut down the VM. Yeah, so you need to do all this configuration, right? Mount the non-boot pseudonano cron tab, add a job of this into the cron tab so that when it reboots, it will start the interface with the OpenSSH server enabled, right? So this little much getting into the depths of Linux. I don't want to get there now. This topic for another session. Coming back to this, we have added two files now, which is WPA supplicant.conf and SSH. We have seen how the WPA supplicant conf looks, and SSH is just a empty text file. Another config.txt, command line.txt. How do you know which IP address it will take on once it boots into the network? Your router will have a DHCP server. It will automatically assign a IP to this. But how do you figure out which IP is it so that you can log into that using open up a SSH session? You can force the IP to take force the Raspberry Pi to take an IP by negotiating with the DHCP server by adding a command into the command line.txt called IP equal to 192.168.0.100 or whatever is your router's normal DHCP IP leases. Based on that pattern, you give an IP here, right? 192.168.0.100 is what I'm giving you, but there is no guarantee that this IP will stick all the time. I've had cases when it will stick perfectly for some days. I think it depends on the Linux variant that comes in the Raspbian. Some versions it will work fine, some versions it doesn't work fine. But I'll tell you what you can use to figure out which IP it has booted into, right? I'll save it back. That's it. You're good now. Eject the SD card from your system. Okay, so that is ejected. Now I'll insert the SD card into the Raspberry Pi, right? Okay. I've inserted the SD card into the Raspberry Pi. I'm plugging that into the power supply here. Okay. So give it a minute for that to boot, consume all that information, right, that you have given and come on the network. Meanwhile, let us open up. How many of you have used a IP scanner or a network scanner called Nmap? How many of you are comfortable? Anybody have worked with an IP scanner or any Nmap? Nmap tool? Okay. So it's a
Seems
way
like,
to.
sorry, seems like no. Yeah.
Some of them have, yeah, some of them.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So there are a couple of tools I use, and it's called an Angry IP scanner. IP scanner. Yeah, there it is. I use this tool. I also use Nmap just to figure out. So I'll start this. This is usually slower, but I prefer Nmap. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see. Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm running a nmap command. I'm asking it to search for port 22, which is the default SSH port. And what is the IP address I wanted to scan? I wanted to scan between 192.168.0.1 to 255, right? Basically class C addresses, right? So let it scan. I know we have given it an IP of 192.168.0.100, but not necessarily every time it will stick to that. Let us see what will happen. Usually I don't do that. What I do is I get, I figure out the MAC ID of this and put a DHCP permanent routing in my router for that MAC ID so that I know what the IP is. Any other equivalent to Nmap? No, I think Nmap does whatever you want and more. I don't, I'm not ventured beyond. There are other network discovery tools, but I don't think nothing comes to close in terms of the flexibility Nmap gives. So if we go here, we need to. Okay, nothing is coming up. We put SSH and we put okay, I'm not seeing any Raspberry Pi. This is Pi hole. Post open 10 and 42. 42. What is 42? Okay, let us log into 42. Okay, it's not Raspberry Pi. What's happening? Okay, let me restart this and then try again. I'm in the right network. Yes, I'm connected to the right network. it's not connecting. Okay, it worked the last time I did about an hour back, and something must have. Okay, so I have one more Raspberry Pi which is here. So I'll connect to that and show you. SSH Pi at minus L Nova. Okay, I don't know. This is Nova Pi. Step Pi. Okay, I don't know the password to this as well. So I guess we'll have to repeat this. Sure, what went wrong, but we'll have to reflash it. Just be a quick thing. Mm, card. Okay. Any other questions? If you have, we can do one more round of question and answer.
Yeah, so there's a question to know if there is any other equivalent to Nmap.
Yeah. Yeah, there could be. Try the website alternate2.net, alternate to to.net net website. You give it any software name, it'll get you the alternatives for that. But Nmap is very, very powerful, and yeah, like I said, it serves so much of. It's got a huge following that always keeps on updating, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with that.
Could you repeat the URL for us, sir?
Yeah, alternate to to.net, I think. Just check it up.
And there's a question on.
No, sorry. Yeah, alternative to. Okay, sorry,
Oh,
alternative to. Yeah, this is the website.
Yeah,
You
and
can search for Nmap. Yeah.
okay.
Angry IP scanner, which I was using, Fingers Android. So ZenMap, it is a GUI for thing.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, do we have a free Raspberry Pi simulation software to test before we do experiments?
I mean, a lot of people have asked me this, but I always wondered, why do you need a simulation? I mean, nothing will happen to a Raspberry Pi. What do you need to test in a Raspberry Pi simulation that you don't want to test in the actual one? I'm just curious.
Fair enough. We have not got response for that. Um, so the next question is again basically on networking. Will there be networking like static IPv6 supported for Raspberry Pi?
Yeah, I mean, it's a regular Linux distribution, right? Based on Debian.
Right.
So whatever Debian supports, Raspberry Pi should support ideally. But especially the larger versions that I'm using should support, if not the Debian Lite, Raspbian Lite. So yes, it should.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you would like to take this, but anyway, I would read it out for you.
Yeah, sure.
Can you list out some of the difference between ZenMap and Nmap?
I think ZenMap is just the UI for Nmap. It's a cross-platform GUI. It still needs a Nmap. So whatever you run it in the GUI, right? It will collect all that, create a Nmap command and run it in a shell inside it.
Okay, so ZenMap just provides an interface to the
That's all.
Nmap.
That's
So,
all.
yeah.
If you are comfortable with command line, you don't need a ZenMap.
Perfect. I think we have only so much on the question side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes, guys. I just want to show this and we can close it for the
No
day.
worries. Yeah, I also see the progress bar is around 93%.
Yeah. I mean, like, uh, so I'm scanning again. Hopefully, let's see.
Sure.
42. No, it's not coming up. Not sure what's wrong. State 35 doesn't. Let's Omega Prime. It's not. Was Raspberry Pi, Pi-hole. Yeah, that's my DNS server. Forgotten the password. I need to look it up. I mean, I can see the network. It's we got it. See this 46. Nmap scan for report Raspberry Pi.coffee cafe is my local domain name. Raspberry Pi.coffee cafe 46. So let's log in using Pi. SSH minus L Pi. I think I have the command somewhere there. Yes. Host verification key. There is a problem. Please contact your system administrator. I'll fix that later. That is because we have a host SSH key. Windows stores it in some odd location. I need to figure that out. Data, nothing there. 46, open port 22. Yes. Login as Pi, and the username will be Raspberry first time around. So we have logged into the shell of the brand new Raspberry Pi. Couple of things you need to do once you log in. First is you need to say sudo raspi config and set up the user password. I won't change it now, but for the Pi user, you need to change the password. Then you can do network option, change the host name. Let me just call it Pi 0. Pi 3. It's a Pi 3, right? So I'll call it Pi 3. Then localization options, you need to change the time zone. You need to change the time zone because it will be under UTC. You need to go to Asia, select Kolkata. I think even they've added Mumbai, but unfortunately no Bangalore yet. So Kolkata, select Kolkata and it will set it. Then interfacing, connect to camera. You can enable, disable camera, SSH. You need to enable VNC. You can do that. But we won't do VNC. We'll do remote desktop. You can install even VNC as well. There are enough, tutorials on overclocking. If you want overclocking, right now it's running at 800 megahertz. You can push. I think this is 1.2. The B, 2B was 800 megahertz. Advanced expand file system to take the whole of all the 32 GB. Then overscan, if you want to overscan memory split, amount of GPU, by default, the X Windows part of it, the GPU is only allocated 64. Since we have 1 GB, we can take it to 256 MB. So your graphics will be much more smoother. Then what else? We don't need anything here. Overlay FS, if you want to enable, disable, that is because you don't want anybody to write onto the actual root file system, but we are not going there right now. Update, I'll show you how to do it manually. So finish. Would you like to reboot now? Okay, we'll reboot now. The connectivity is closed. By the time it reboots, let me check SSH group. I can remove this and I can connect it back here. Nmap ping 42, ping 192.168.0.46. Not yet. Yeah, there you go. It's up and running. Now we'll connect using SSL. Yes. Password, we didn't change the password, so it's still Raspberry. Okay, it's prompting you to change the password. Yes, it's a good thing to change the password. Now you need to update this because the OS between the time the OS was released, it's February, now it's already May. So a lot of packages will have updates, but first you need to update the package list itself and then the packages. So sudo apt install update and then upgrade. Able to locate apt install apt sorry, update, not install, update. Yeah, it's getting the updates from the Raspberry website. How many of you are very familiar with Linux hands-on? Okay. Cool. So if you are familiar with Linux, most of these process will be much easier. Otherwise, Raspberry Pi has a little tough learning curve to, especially if you are using Linux. I mean, yes, like somebody had asked, is there a Windows for this? Yes, there is a Windows, but I believe I have used both Windows and Linux. And I believe Windows has a much steeper learning curve than a Linux running on a Raspberry Pi. Right? So the advantage of running Linux on a Raspberry Pi is you can use various languages, C, shell scripts, Python, right? Python is extremely versatile. All my scripts that I was, yes, you can change the archive package mirror. Yes, I think the default location for archive packages slash user share, there is some place where you can change the archive package mirrors. I mean, this is a normal Linux distribution, right? Just package for ARM. So everything that you have in other Linux distributions, you also have it here. Oh man, it's very slow. Maybe my kids are running Prime right now, so. Okay, super. Now let us upgrade. The reason I want to upgrade is I want to install XRDP, which is the remote desktop protocol. Yes. So that I can show you the UI that comes by default with Raspberry Pi. Just a basic UI, but you can configure, I use UI when I use RTL SDR. I don't know if any of you are aware of RTL SDRs, it's a software defined radio. I connected to my HF or the VHF antennas and scan the skies for frequencies anywhere between 300 kilohertz to 1.2, 1.3 gigahertz. I use on Windows as well. Windows, you have SDR Sharp or HD SDR, but on Linux, you have Whisk or GNU Radio, GQRX as well. So yeah, I use UI for that. Otherwise, I am happy working in the command line. That most of my job is done there. So another thing is when you are working on setting up a Raspberry Pis, you will end up especially creating a lot of Python and shell scripts. What I do is I just create a free GitHub repo and then upload all the scripts there so that when I want it, I just install Git on any of my Raspberry Pis, download my script and start working. So that I don't have to save it across the installations and that knowledge is not lost. I mean, I would have put some effort into creating those scripts for that particular scenario. I don't want to lose all those scripts. So I just have a GitHub repo where I keep all the scripts between one Raspberry Pi device to another one. So if we need to have a question and answer session, probably we can do it now.
There's a question which says that could you provide a link to learn some basics of RPi? Apart from that, I don't see much of questions on the chat window. I think like we have addressed most of them.
So, I mean, there are tons of tutorials on YouTube. That is more than enough. And also, like I said, you need a basic Linux knowledge to make most of it. But I mean, YouTube is a fantastic resource. I've, especially on the IoT side, on the engineering side, or the cloud, I have stopped looking at reading books because the technology is progressing so fast that anybody publishes a book is outdated in 3 to 4 months, right? So I'm just looking up any software. I just go to their website, read up the documentation, and go with the flow. So unlike even 5-10 years back, you had a lot of PDFs which used to help you out, but now I just either I go research and make a video out of that for public consumption, or I wait for somebody to create a video and update my knowledge. Yeah, somebody has a question.
Yes, I think like we have addressed most of them.
Sorry, guys, this is taking a little bit time, but I wanted to show you this. It was easy for me to show a installed Raspberry Pi, but that is no fun. So I just wanted to show you how to install it and configure it.
No worries, like we can wait for the system to come up. In the meantime, like if you want to share any more insights, like probably want to give some tips and tricks to the student community where they can get started, and now even like the IoT is booming, right? So if they want to start with any little projects, what exactly they need to do?
I mean,
What should be their starting steps? Probably if you can share those tips, that would be helpful.
I mean, so the kind of resources we have now, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I used to teach at multiple places, including NIT. And before I was a software developer, then I became a software developer. Um, what I tell people whom I teach is we did a lot of programming before Google was mainstream, right? We did that only by referring to books. So now people can't even, think about doing something without searching on Google. So I think it's also limiting what we can do because many of the solutions are already there and we get biased to certain solutions. I'm not saying that is the right way, but try to think on solutions. Try to, like I initially said here, if you have a problem, don't live with it. Try to solve it, right? You might have a problem, like I told you about that problem that I had with the package delivery, right? There was a problem. Okay. And I solved it. I mean, you get enormous amount of peripherals that you can control with Raspberry Pis or Node MCUs or Arduinos, right? So my daughter was asking, get me a remote control car. So I said, nothing doing, you make one. So I gave this to my kids and my son came up with this remote control car, right? I'm not buying them a remote control car that you get in a shop, right? I mean, my uh, he gets the code from he watches YouTube videos. He download the code from somebody's GitHub, puts it in the Arduino, flashes it to the Node MCU, and it works, right? So it's not like he will fix the problems in the code. That is where I step in. He need not to, right? At his age level, I don't expect him to make this into a Ferrari, right? But this is enough for my daughter to play as a remote control car, homemade remote control car, right? Don't buy stuff. Try to build stuff, right? So buying is easy. Now you have enough tools at your disposal to build stuff, right? I here itself, I have showed you 5 or 6 varieties of controller, microprocessor and controllers. Imagine what you can do, right? Look for problems, try to solve them. Okay. So now that we have finished it, I'll quickly install apt install xrdp. So, I mean, amount of solutions we can think of is mind-boggling. I mean, even if you go search in Google for say Raspberry Pi projects, okay, you will get tons and tons of ideas what you can do with Raspberry Pi, what you can do with Arduino, what you can do with Node MCU, right? So, looking at all this, my wife keep on complaining. You'll always somehow find a problem to solve. I'm not. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun to solve problems when you have the tools. You have the tools, right? It's really bad to not solve problems when you have the tools, right? That is how you keep yourself active, energetic, right? Uh, Thinking, right? So that innovation, right? What Modi ji says, make in India. You have enough tools, make in India, right? So do stuff. Okay, now it's done. You can check very quickly whether XRDP is running or not. Let's start NLPTU. XRDP should be running -EL RDP. Yeah, see, XRDP is running. So we can say MSTSC, which is the remote control 46, and yes, connect. We did not change the password, so it is still Raspberry. Okay. You get confused writing Raspberry. And yeah, again, one more saying, please change the password. Yeah, please change it, right? So this is your default Raspberry Pi desktop. Okay, by default, okay, you get programming editors, IDEs for Python and Genie. You get a Chromium web browser. You get VLC media player, and you can also watch YouTube from here. You know, imagine this one small thing, you can watch YouTube or Prime Video on, right? You can, this also, remember, this got a HDMI port. You can connect this to your TV. You can log into Prime Video and you can watch. I mean, this is not the best browser. You get Firefox also. I usually install Opera or Firefox, but this will also do. So if you search for Raspberry Pi tutorials, right? Tutorials. I always compare YouTube and other educational resources now with the movie Matrix. If you remember the movie Matrix, where he says, I don't know how to fly a helicopter, but that should not be a problem. He calls up the phone and says, give me, load me up with knowledge on flying a helicopter. And that guy in the, in his hidden ship, he loads certain commands, and this guy gets the knowledge on how to fly a helicopter. YouTube is exactly like that nowadays. You want to learn anything, there is YouTube, there is other websites where you can pay a certain amount of money and learn stuff. You don't have to wait for anyone. That is the best part. So there is a lot of Raspberry Pi and Python tutorials, right? So yeah, I think I'll stop here. We can configure this on end. See, this got Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, sound as well. And the time, we set the time zone so the time is correct, right? So yeah, I think we can close the session now.
Sure, sir. Indeed, like it was a very knowledgeable session on Raspberry Pi. And in fact, probably going by this initial session, we also can think of a hands-on workshop for our student community in coming days. Probably you would also be obliged to do that. And before we,
Think about that.
yeah, so before we wind it up, so there is one question which says that a student is currently working on an IoT project and he is planning to use RPi. Do you suggest any servers that he can host RPi so that he can monitor local node MCUs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Raspberry Pi is a full-fledged Linux computer, so you can install Python, install any of the when you say Nikhil Hari, right? When you say I want to monitor local node MCUs, node MCUs you can run like I said, you can have MQTT, which is subscriber publisher model using messages, right? So you can set up a MQTT server on the cloud. I think RabbitMQ is one which will give you a free cloud version, MQTT server. Your Node MCUs, different Node MCUs are all subscribers pushing messages to the RabbitMQ server, and you have a centralized monitoring station on the Raspberry Pi monitoring all the Node MCUs. You can also send them messages directly. So that way, by delimiting your Node MCU connection with the Raspberry Pis directly, you have removed the distance part of it. Your Node MCU can exist anywhere in the world. You can monitor just by uploading messages onto the cloud.
Thank you, sir. So as we are like already delayed by
Half an hour.
more than 30 minutes, like we would be winding up this session. So before we do that, I would request Raghavendra sir to share his final comments on the series that we had for this week. So Raghavendra sir. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, please.
Thank you, Mr. Guru Prasad. It was a wonderful session. And I'll just brief out, I'll take just 1 minute to brief out what we had in last 1 week's time. IEEE BLR SAC Learning Series from 26th April to 1st May 2020 on every day between 6 to 7 p.m. we arranged. I thank Mr. Puneet Mishra, Chair IEEE Bangalore section, who is the motivation behind this series. I thank all the speakers on the first day, that is 26th April, Sunday. Artificial pancreas development by Professor Radhakant Padi, Professor in IISc. And 27th, Monday, we had automation. Why is it even more relevant now? Ms. Sugandha Srikanteshwaran from Vice President in IBM. And 28th, Tuesday, Introduction to Data Science by Dr. Gopal Krishna Sharma, Director, FISR. And on 29th, that's Wednesday, Graduate Studies in Engineering in US by Dr. Sudha Kumar, from Director USC Viterbi. And 30th, we had Mindhunter Decoding and by Sham Sundar Ramswamy. And next is on first, that is today, we had a wonderful session by Guru Prasad, a headless setup Raspberry Pi. I thank all the participants. It was a fantastic journey for 1 week. And I thank all the speakers who have agreed to share their knowledge and spare their valuable time. Especially, I thank Dr. Sujata ma'am, who is the SAC co-chair, who is also a professor in the college, BMS College of Engineering, who has taken pain in contacting all the speakers and making this to happen. Especially, I thank Mr. Chenkappa, who is the moderator, who was very patient enough to ask take all the questions and merge some of the questions so that to save the time and also to give very good solutions to the people who are listening. I thank all EXICOM members of IEEE Bangalore section for the support. And I thank all the branch counselors, student branch chairs who have communicated to IEEE members to register and also attend the same. We saw that every day at least 80 to 120 members who joined this session and they enjoyed these sessions. I thank all the attendees. E-certificates will be sent to you, all the attendees, in a week's time. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Over to Chenkappa, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that final remark, sir. And in fact, like since you have done all the needful for this session, so let's go ahead and wind up this session for today. So for the students who have joined, please keep a tab on your inbox for the further e-notice on the webinar sessions that we would be having in coming days. Thank you all.
Thank you.